All right, so this video tutorial here is going to help you with some issues that we tend to have with pronoun agreements with their antecedents. Those are the words that they take the place of in sentences. And also we're going to look at how we kind of deal with pronoun references, trying to be sure that it's clear to the reader what the pronoun is taking the place of. And these are just common things that we need to be sure we pay attention to when we're writing and when we're using pronouns in sentences here. So this is just sort of like a video sort of cheat sheet, if you will, or a cheat video. I guess maybe that's not the right term, but you get the idea. So we're going to go through this real quick, and hopefully this will answer some of your questions about how we kind of deal with some common issues that we have with pronouns. And if you have any questions about anything, don't hesitate to ask during class, or shoot me an email, post something in discussion forum on D2L. You can come by during office hours, or you can ask one of your TAs. Really, anything at all. Any question you have, I'll be happy to help regarding this issue or anything else. So let's take a look, and give me a quick second to bring my slides up. We know that you've always wanted to know about pronoun agreement, unclear pronoun references, etc. So this is just going to make all your wildest pronoun dreams come true. And tell you, it's just my distinct honor to be able to present this for you. All right, so as you haven't noticed, I do kind of like joke around a little bit. Kind of makes the material, which can be kind of dry. Hopefully it makes it a little lighter. I don't know if it does or not necessarily. But anyway, I try. So let's go into these things here, and hopefully this will we'll kind of hit some of the big questions that we tend to have over these. Pronouns in general, just as we know, they just take the place of a noun or another pronoun in a sentence. And of course, what they take the place of is what's called an antecedent, which is best if it comes before, obviously, the pronoun that it takes the place of, so that way we know what the pronoun's referring back to. Okay, and really, pronouns can be quite useful. We use them all the time. They're great for taking the place of nouns or pronouns, other things like that might have long names. Something they could using these pronouns can kind of make our writing a little more succinct and help us say a lot with fewer words, which is of course what we like to do as communicators. All right, so moving on here, this is kind of the one of the big ways that we tend to get confused regarding pronoun agreement. It has to do with basically the number of the pronoun, whether singular or plural, in verbs. So as you know, pronouns can be the subjects of sentences, but they have to agree with the verbs that accompany them, just like a regular subject does. And usually this really only gets confusing when we deal with indefinite pronouns that can confuse people. And when I say indefinite pronouns, it's just a fancy word really for words like another, anybody, something, someone, nobody, no one, nothing, etc. I've got them listed here. There's a longer list in your textbook. So this is from the Making the Parts Agree chapter of your textbook in chapter 5. And so these pronouns can be either plural or singular depending on the sentence's meaning. These really throw people off. All, any, each, more, most, none, plenty, some, and such. Okay? And just as the big one that we're confused about is often none. And just keep in mind that none basically means not one. Okay, and in most of the uses that we're going to that we'll see. Here's an example. None of the students has studied for the exam. This is we're using, of course, the singular form of to have here, has, and we're tempted to make has have because students, of course, is plural, more than one student there, but really what the subject is not one of the students. So we're saying that not one of the students has studied. And that's why we need this to be singular, because we're talking about not one. And it's confusing, and it may sound strange to our ears when we read it out loud to ourselves, but this is just one of those little rules for this class that we'll need to just be sure we're practicing and remembering. Probably 90% of this class is memorization. The rest is, well, maybe half the class is memorization, let's say that, and the other half of the class is just following directions. And this is, remembering little things like this is what will help you. All right, so why not have? Because we mean not one, okay? And now each we need to remember, is singular. And just as is either or neither when used by themselves. So, for example, each student has come to class prepared. Okay? Even though we're talking about students in a group, and we mean each one of those students. So whenever you see each, you need to think one. Okay? That's why it's has and not have. Even if we see something that says each of the students has come to class prepared, it would be has and not have. Okay? All right, so another thing that can kind of throw us off here is how pronoun agreement relates to its antecedents here. And largely these have to do with collective nouns. And one thing you'll want to remember, of course, is that pronouns agree with their antecedents in three ways: gender, number, and person. Okay, and by person I mean first person, second person, third person, etc. Of course, you'll recall from different points in the lecture that we tend to prefer third person in communications. So, all right, easy enough. The deal, like we said earlier, that confuses us is when a pronoun has to agree with a noun that is an uncountable noun, as your book calls it, or a collective noun, and also some of these indefinite pronouns that can throw us off. And usually this has to do with when we're confusing these large entities, like a company or a team, which is made up of many smaller things, and treat those as plural, those entities, when in fact they're usually singular. Okay? So your textbook has some great examples of these problems. We've also, there are a bunch in the workbook as well. You want to review those and practice them. Well, I want to work a couple of big examples though for you here real quick. So I want you to tell me, or at least work through this. You can't obviously tell me, this is a video, but let's take this out here and tell me, or kind of see for yourself there, what's wrong with this sentence. The company announced Friday it will lay off more than 200 workers. So here, the subject is company. It's making an announcement that it's going to lay off more than 200 workers here. So what's wrong with this, other fact that there's no period apparently there. What is wrong with this sentence? With this, you'll see, check out this pronoun here that I bolded, it. What do you think might be wrong with that? Well, nothing's wrong with it actually, because company is acting as a single unit in this sentence here. Here we have just the company doing one thing, the company as a whole, as one, putting this announcement out. Okay? So it wouldn't be, we wouldn't change it to they, okay, which is a pronoun that takes a plural antecedent. It is a singular pronoun. Okay? So another examples here that have to do with that can be confusing. The Senate passed their amendment to the transportation bill. Okay? So what we need to look at here is Senate, because there's the pronoun, and obviously the Senate is the antecedent of there. How many is Senate? Well, we're talking about one body here. It's made up of a lot of, folks, obviously, in the Senate. But the Senate here is, in this instance, the Senate here is acting as it's fulfilling its role to pass legislation. Okay, so it's acting as one body. Okay, now if the Senate, if the individual members of the Senate were taking action, then it would become plural. Okay, and that's a little confusing when it comes down to the writing side of it. It can get a little awkward. But in this instance here, we just have the Senate acting as a whole unit here, as one, to pass this amendment to the transportation bill. Okay, so it's singular. So then what would we do with there? Okay. We've established that Senate is singular. We're going to change there to its ITS. And of course, it's not IT apostrophe S, right? Because that is the contraction it is, right? And its is we're making the possessive version there of it, right? Okay, so we sure don't want to be confused about that. And of course, if you have any questions about it, just let me know. This is just one of those things that throws us a lot. Because we're dealing with, again, these singular units that are made up of many smaller units, and we tend to want to treat them as plural when in fact they're usually singular. Okay. All right, some more examples. I know you wanted more examples here. This is no doubt the most fun you've ever had. So let's take a look at this one right here. The teacher took up the homework assignments done by each student in their class. So what would we do here? Let's think about that for a second. We have a tendency to want to use the pronoun there when we are not sure of the gender of the antecedent. Here we don't say female teacher or male teacher, right? So it's confusing. I mean, so would we use his or her? We don't know, right? And so we want to say there. Well, the problem is that there, like we talked about earlier, takes a plural antecedent, okay? And teacher is singular. So this isn't necessarily the least awkward way to fix this sentence, okay? But we want to remember that we just don't use there when we're not sure the antecedent's gender. There is only for when we have a plural antecedent, okay? So instead, we're going to substitute his or her in for there. So his or her, the exact phrase, his or her. It's going to be a little longer than it needs to be, but that's just the way you fix that. Another way would be to simply rewrite the sentence to where you don't have to use those three words here. But that's basically what you how you fix that. Okay. All right. So pronoun references. Sometimes we can get into trouble here when it's not clear what the pronoun is taking the place of in the sentence, and we can see then how that would be confusing for the reader if they don't know what our pronouns are referring back to, right? So, and the way we fix this generally is that we need to be sure that our antecedents come before the pronouns themselves. So, and we also need to be sure that there might not be some confusion. As they say, if there's, for example, several possible antecedents that come before the pronoun in question, we'll want to be sure that there's no confusion if there might be a couple of possible antecedents appearing before it. So let me know if that doesn't make sense, but generally what we want to be sure is that just be sure we have these antecedents preceding the pronoun. So let's take a look at this one here, this example. Bill's father took a job at the plant when he was 15. So what's the problem there? Take a look at that. How many antecedents do we have? Okay. We have the pronoun he. Does it refer to Bill or does it refer to Bill's father? We don't know, do we? Because it could be either one, right? Bill could have taken the job when Bill was 15, or Bill's father could have taken it when Bill was 15, or Bill's father could have taken the job when Bill's father was 15, right? So that's the problem there with that sentence. And the way we typically fix it would be something like, when Bill's father was 15, he took a job at the plant. Well, of course, it depends on what we originally meant to say, but this is just how we would fix it if this was the actual meaning of the sentence here. Okay. So here it's clear that we're talking about Bill's father, and there's not any sort of confusion with the reader who we're talking about, right? What about this one? He bought the car when he was 50, Bill said, which made his wife angry. Okay, so the problem with this is, let's look at the pronoun he, okay? And we have several usages of he there, and then we also have his. Is that appearing before the antecedent? We don't really know, because Bill is the only thing that could potentially be what the pronoun's referring to in the sentence, but we don't really have enough information here to be able to tell if maybe Bill's referring to somebody else. But this is just an example of how we need to be sure that there is a clear antecedent that appears before the pronoun. So this would definitely need to be rewritten. And this is just, like I said, just an example of how this confusion can take place if there's no clear antecedent that appears before the pronoun itself, not even one. Okay? This is how it can be confusing. Who does he refer to? We just don't know. All right. So we're going to avoid these by making sure that our antecedents come before their pronouns. Okay, and it's an easy one to remember. We want to be sure we practice it. It's a little tougher to catch in our writing just because editing's just tough, and this is a hard class. Writing is not easy, and writing in a clear way is not easy. The only thing that really helps with that is just this memorization, and then applying what you learned and practicing it, and not getting too discouraged when we mess up. It took me, tons and tons and tons of time to finally get to where I felt like my writing was decent, and it's just something you just have to be patient. Make sure you just keep at it. So make sure there are no other possible antecedents that could potentially confuse the reader. So we'll watch out for those things. Read our copy out loud to ourselves, and sometimes it helps, like I mentioned in the previous video. Sometimes it helps to show our writing to someone who we know might be a decent, good editor, someone who can take a look at it and tell you whether something makes sense or not, or whether you may want to revise something. Again, you're not asking them to do it for you. You're just saying, you're just showing them your work and saying, hey, does this work? Does this not work? It happens all the time. So, all right. Well, hopefully this answers some of your questions. Don't hesitate to ask if something's confusing. If I haven't, if I've confused you more than I've answered questions, please just let me know. That could certainly happen, and we'll sort through it. All right. Hopefully this helps. See you in class.